Of all the alternative investments out there, perhaps nothing is hotter right now than fine art. At a recent auction, this sculpture, The Pointing Man, sold for $141 million at Christie's. Also, The Ring by Roy Lichtenstein fetched almost $42 million at Sotheby's. Meanwhile, this other painting by Pablo Picasso sold for a record-breaking $180 million at Christie's. Given these numbers at the upcoming auctions this week in London, the stakes could not be higher. For more, I want to bring in Bloomberg art market reporter Katya Kazakina. She has been following the developments closely. Katya, tell us about how this rivalry between Christie's and Sotheby's has been shaping up.
Well,
starting in the 18th century.
Goes back quite a while, but it really hasn't been more cutthroat or fierce than ever right now. Just because
they were colluding in the past, right?
And now they have to fight each other.
Right? They were. Alfred Taubman went to jail for 10 months for that. This is not some kind of...
How did Christie's pull out ahead of Sotheby's in modern and contemporary?
Well, they're really taking a lot more risks, and they put together this mega auction where the Picasso you just mentioned was the star lot, and it kind of acted like an anchor to draw all these other amazing Rothkos and Bacons and Warhols, and so they also jammed all of their sales into 1 week. A very kind of savvy strategic move, and they sold $1.7 billion worth of art in 1 week, and they, of course, heralded it all over the world. And then Sotheby's, stuck to its traditional schedule, sold almost half of what Christie's did, and so it really Christie's emerged as a clear winner in this round.
$1.7 billion.
First of all, I think amazing is in the eye of the beholder, especially when you're talking about a Rothko, and secondly, a point that I was making earlier while we were off camera is that you don't know how much the profit margins are. So Christie's sells $1.7 billion of art in, like, what, 4 days, right? Sotheby's sells less than half that in 2 weeks, but Sotheby's may be making 8, 9, 10%. They're a public company, so we find out. Christie's is a privately held company. We don't know how much they're paying to sell that art.
Exactly, and so it's a really strategic disadvantage for Sotheby's to be in that position. Christie's is very, very big on guarantees always, but especially this season. And so going into these sales, more than half of the material was essentially pre-sold. They guaranteed sellers a certain amount, which is undisclosed, and just to get that, to win those consignments.
And that is not necessarily profitable for them. A lot of people think, oh my God, they sold a $100 million Picasso, surely they're going to make a fat margin.
Well, we can talk about Giacometti. We can talk about the Giacometti, which Stephen Cohen reportedly bought at Sotheby's for $90 million. They'd already guaranteed the seller 103, and so even after taxes and fees came to 101 for SAC, they still had to make up, and this is the Pointing Man is different than the Chariot, but they still had to pony up $2 million. They lost $2 million on that sale alone.
And that sale was the largest auction sale of 2014, and they still lost money on it. But also did Christie's. A year earlier, they sold the Balloon Dog by Jeff Koons. We should have an image of it, actually.
We do. And nobody will believe how much it went for.
Yeah, almost $60 million. But they also lost money on it, or at least they didn't make any money. So because the marketing, they made their tote bags with those balloons. They made their catalog covers.
Jeff Koons made some money on that.
Jeff Koons probably didn't make some money on that
sale. He made a balloon dog and sold it for $58 million?
But he wasn't the seller. The seller was Peter Brandt.
I see, okay.
Important point.
Very important. Artists really don't see, this money doesn't go to artists at all. It goes to collectors who buy the works.
For the most part. Koons is probably fairly wealthy himself. Right?
I mean,
that was the most ever paid for a living artist.
For a living artist. Yeah. So it's really interesting that even with that huge auction record and a price, an auction house, because it has to give up so much to the seller to get that consignment to begin with, that's where it is. That's where competition. And sellers really know this, and they play the houses against each other.
It's a great story, and actually, so you're surprised how little leverage the auction house actually has. The
now that they can't collude,
seller.
Because those were the days. Those were the days.
Like you've never had a seminar on defamation.